You probably don't think about swords much in your everyday life. Despite being the primary method of waging war for thousands of years, after the spread of firearms, sword fighting and other martial arts techniques have largely fallen to the wayside of history. Whether incorporated into modern sports, used for fight scenes in movies, or discarded entirely, these historical techniques are all but forgotten in their original forms. However, there are groups looking to change all that. Since the early 1970s, there's been an effort to restore the practice of these martial arts and reconstruct them from the manuals and treatises that have survived to the modern day. This is known as HEMA, or Historical European Martial Arts. As much reconstructive history as the physical practice of the techniques themselves, HEMA offers a fascinating blend of scholarship, athleticism, training, and tradition. To explore this often overlooked corner of the historical community, it's time to go to the St. Louis School of Arms in Affton, Missouri, a school leading the study of swordsmanship from the Bologna region of Italy. As a niche subset of the already niche Italian style, the School of Arms boasts the largest collection of documentation surrounding the Bolognese style in the entire world.
My name is Ken Harding. I'm the instructor and founder of the St. Louis School of Arms. Like most people who grew up in the 70s and 80s, were flooded with martial arts movies. So the allure of studying something exotic, something dangerous with weapons, of course, that brought me to the desire to get involved with martial arts, particularly with Japanese martial arts. Japanese martial arts have an elegance, a structure to them, a formality to them, which I found appealing. What drew me to HEMA first was the discovery of it, because growing up in the 70s and 80s, we at that time had no notion that there was a martial art of Europe at all, anything formal or traditional, anything passed down from generation to generation. The idea of what martial arts were for Europe was simply what you see in the movies of bashing swords together with no real method or intent, just smashing weapons together. So very crude. So when I learned that there in fact were systematized traditions of martial arts that originated from European countries, I was very interested in that. Studying something perhaps closer to my own ethnic background, I was interested in that as well. Bolognese HEMA, or Historical European Martial Arts, is a very small niche. Of course, we're surrounded by systems of German HEMA and Italian HEMA. German HEMA is by far the most widespread, Italian being second, but even within the Italian HEMA community, the Bolognese system is still a minority, still not that widely known. Some people don't even within HEMA, aren't familiar with it. And what drew me to Bolognese HEMA in particular is, as I mentioned before, about elegance. It's even more elegant than other forms. It's a beautiful style. And it's also a very structured style, whereas many forms of HEMA are derived from the Middle Ages, and the source material for them is sketchy. It's fragmentary. It's conveyed in a poetic sense without a lot of detail, without a lot of, it's not expanded very well in a lot of the texts that are preserved from the Middle Ages, simply because people wrote them down on parchments by hand in a brief way, and not a lot of detail got transmitted through that method. But when the Bolognese system began to be written down, certainly in the manuscripts that are preserved to the present day, they were printed. They were printed on Gutenberg printing presses. They weren't handwritten manuscripts. And therefore, they're in paragraph form with a great amount of detail in complete book form. So one thing that drew me to Bolognese martial arts is the depth and breadth of the material, of the descriptions, of the methodology explained. And not only that, we're speaking of 5 historical sources, not merely one. So we'd be lucky to have simply one of these books in our possession. We happen to have 5 of them. So the balance between historical accuracy and what we do here, in practical terms, there really is no difference. What's important is that what we do is what they said to do. So the historical accuracy is our first priority. Now, how does one practice historical European martial arts accurately and be safe? So there's a compromise made in safety, which is, of course, we wear the protective gear. And also, people are training in a very technical way. We have our technical training, which probably involves most of the classes that we have are done in this technical way, where people are practicing slowly, carefully, in order to make movements accurately, in order to have good posture, good balance, good positioning, to make the forms correct. Then, when people have done this enough and have absorbed the historically accurate technical information, then and only then are they permitted to free play or spar, where what they do becomes less precise, less accurate, less elegant. Of course, when things are put under pressure, people become less about what they trained for and more about what they do instinctually. So there's some loss, and there always will be. What we strive to do, though, is maintain that historical accuracy. And for the Bolognese, their historical method, as they described it, was elegant. A frequent word used in the 500-year-old manuscripts is elegant, is graceful. They expected it. They demanded that their art be done gracefully and elegantly. And if one does it correctly, one will be elegant. Well, that started about a dozen years ago. At that time, the Bolognese branch of HEMA wasn't being widely worked. It hadn't been adequately described. It hadn't been adequately explored. It was really only in the beginning stages of that. And whereas most schools of HEMA don't specialize in only one kind. You see a lot of work in German plus Italian, or longsword and rapier, or many different disciplines, even from many different countries, certainly from different sources. So what I did differently from other places is I worked exclusively in the Bolognese tradition. We did not pursue any other branch or style of HEMA. So that was the first factor. The other is drive, obsession, even, if you will, and then I pursued it relentlessly. Most people have to have a daytime job. I, pretty early on, was able to leave the daytime job and pursue the HEMA discipline full-time. What's evolved, for the most part, more than anything, is our understanding of the material. So when first opening up one of the source books, even though you read the words, there can be very little understanding. Just because you see what they wrote does not mean that you understand how they wanted it to look. So over the course of more than a decade, we've worked all of the material in the books, not just once, not even just twice, many, many times, in continuous cycles. And so what we did, what it looked like a dozen years ago, looks really nothing like what it did or what it does today. There hasn't been much change in the way that I teach or the way I present the material. I've taught martial arts 20 years before ever getting involved in HEMA, so I have a pretty well-established methodology of my instruction in the way that I relate to people. So really what's changed the most is the material, and which is the lifeblood of what we do. We don't simply make things up here as we go along. Everything that we do is based upon a historical source. That's a real priority for us. So our understanding of that material has evolved over the years, and that's the biggest thing that's changed. People come to a place like this, number one, to have fun. People do enjoy themselves, and that's important that they do. This sort of thing done without enjoyment simply becomes tedious very quickly. So number one, they should enjoy themselves. We have a good community here. It's really a family. People get together inside as well as outside of the classroom, and there's a lot of good relationships that have been developed here. So number one, that. Also, there's a sense of accomplishment. Bolognese martial arts isn't easy, especially to rise to the higher levels of it. In order to do so takes a great deal of commitment, a great deal of self-study, work outside of the classroom environment. And so I think anybody who persists in this for more than a few months will come away with a sense of accomplishment in doing something that very few people can do.
I'm Brian Lee. I've been with the St. Louis School of Arms for a little over 5 years now. I first got into it just because I like historical stuff, I like sword fighting, and I needed to be active. So I signed up. I really like the style of the way we teach here, and it just keeps coming back. Get to learn something new pretty much every day. Even at the rank of free scholar, it just kind of keeps exploring and fully understanding what they wrote down.